Hi, welcome back, and good to see you folks. It's been a while since my last post, and a few days ago I had a cunning plan, and which I hope is going to pay off this evening, but who knows? Can't really tell yet. Anyway, I find myself up in the Peak District, and more specifically, I'm at Ladybower Reservoir. I'm at the northern end, Ladybower Reservoir. It's a nice day, it's good temperature, it's about 17 degrees at the moment, feels like about 13, but that's pretty decent walking weather. Although I'm not really here for a big hike, I'm here for what I hope is going to happen overnight. At the moment we've got slightly overcast skies, sun's coming in and out, but it's supposed to clear. And normally I would hate having a really clear sky at sunset. But actually tonight that's a good thing, because I want a clear sky, because I want to do some astro photography tonight. And it's this time of year when in the UK, in the Northern Hemisphere, we should be able to see the galactic core, and it's relatively few times in the year where it's possible to photograph that well here. You've got to have firstly a clear night, a night with no moon, and there's no moon tonight. It will have set by about 11 p.m. or so. So it's a clear night, there's no moon, the galactic core should be in view as well. So I've come up to the Lake District with the plan of finding a spot overlooking the reservoir, and if possible to do a time lapse of the Milky Way kind of setting over the reservoir. So that's the plan, that is the cunning plan. We shall see whether or not I can actually implement it. Still a few hours till sunset, so it's too early to pitch yet, but I've come out and done my recce without all my kit, because I didn't want to be dragging 55-60 pounds worth of gear all over the place while I just find out where I'm going to be. So time to head on back down the hill. It's a bit of a way. Well, it's not too far, I suppose. I've got about another half a mile or so, maybe a mile at most, to get back to the car. This wood, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's not all greened up in terms of being in leaf and everything yet. These are just some sort of pine, but what a beautiful place. Okay, well I found this really rather gorgeous little waterfall here, so I've got the camera gear out, and I just couldn't resist the temptation of it to stop on the way back up the hill, which is up the trees through there, right up the top in the distance and a bit over that way to the right. But yeah, couldn't resist this, so plan is long exposure, well, relatively long, not as long as the night sky obviously. So I've put the polarizer on. That will help cut down reflections from the water and bring out some of the different tones in the stones, in the rocks. So probably going to end up with something like, well, anywhere between half a second to 4 seconds. I shall try different length exposures and see what we end up with. Well, I have to admit that was a really tricky pitch. There's, well, as you can see, there's not a lot of room on that site, and it's about as much shelter from the wind as I'm going to get. And I decided to pitch here because actually the view's pretty good from here, and I think I'm going to have, assuming the sky does clear, I think I'm going to have a good view of the Milky Way over the reservoir. So looking forward to seeing how that turns out. I think it's time to eat. Well, good morning from a very quiet and still Peak District. So the wind did die down last night, and in fact by the time I went to bed it was really still, and the sky was beginning to clear. It didn't clear completely for quite some time though. There was this nasty light haze in the sky, or very light cloud, and that didn't help with some of the early attempts at photographing the night sky, because it just picks up light pollution and you can't see through to the stars very well. So so it wasn't a great start, and I was a bit worried that it might be like that all night, but in fact it wasn't, and it did clear. I woke up about 1:30, I think, just to check how things were going, and the sky was pretty clear by then. Now sadly, one of the things I forgot to do, this is where I set up my my D800, one of the things that I forgot to do was to turn off image preview on this little baby, and that meant that at some point it ran out of battery juice about 3:30, and I was hoping to do about another half an hour worth of photography for the time lapse, which meant that I think I missed the best point in terms of where the Milky Way was in the picture in reference to the reservoir. But there you go, you live and learn, don't you? I thought I'd done it and I hadn't. I did a whole host of other things. I turned off things like noise reduction, autofocus, auto ISO, covered the eyepiece. I even anchored the tripod to the ground here with a bungee clip and a tent peg. You might just be able to make that out there, and that just gives it a really sturdy base. And then I put the legs wider than I normally would. So that was really a precaution against the wind potentially not dying down, but I needn't have worried about the wind in the end. But it certainly will have made sure anyway that there was no camera shake. So I have reviewed some of the images, and I've got to say I'm just not sure how it's going to come out. The Milky Way is really faint, and I don't know why that is. It's normally more pronounced than I'm seeing this morning. So this is future Nigel here, and I'm back at home. And since getting home, I've managed to work out exactly what I managed to do completely wrong with my Astro Time-lapse. It's a real shame because it was a great opportunity and I fluffed it, but that's life, isn't it? You don't get it right all the time, and especially if you're not out as regularly as you used to be, you start to get a bit rusty, and some of the things that you just kind of take for granted suddenly don't seem so easy, and that was the case this time. And so there were two key problems that happened on this particular shoot. The first one was that I messed up the focus, ironically by trying to make sure that I didn't mess up the focus. So what I did, I set my focus during daylight, and by focusing on something about 100 meters away, and then I taped the focus ring with some gaffer tape, and I just assumed, having then taken a couple of test shots, that it would stay in that position. And sometime between taking my first test shot and my second test shot, it lost focus. But when I reviewed it, I only checked the first test shot. So, big mistake. It's meant that all of the shots, all 300 odd time-lapse shots, were a bit soft. Not great. Then the other problem I had was that, having decided to use my f4 lens, 16mm f4 lens, instead of the 24mm f2.8 lens, I really didn't compensate sufficiently for the lower level of light coming through, and just made some basic miscalculations really, and ended up with probably about half as much light coming in, maybe only 40% as much light coming in, because of that and a combination of not using a high enough ISO level and not borrowing enough extra time in terms of the exposure time, which I could have done with a 16mm lens, but never mind. It meant I really did not capture anything like the amount of light that I needed, and that's why the Milky Way is so faint. And but there you go. As I say, you live and learn, don't you? So I have got another opportunity though coming up in a week or two's time, where I can see if I can redeem myself. And so, weather permitting and a few other factors, I'm hoping I'll pop out again and just do a night shoot, maybe not a camp but a night shoot, and see if I can once again get a decent Astro time-lapse. So let's see how it goes. Oh yes, here's the so here is where my camera was set up in relation to my tent. So there's my pitch down there, so it's just a little jaunt of 50 yards, 60 yards or so up the hill. A bit steep, mind, and onto here, because there's a nice flat base here which I didn't have anywhere else, and it just gave me a little bit more of a view of the reservoir as well. No real sunrise to speak of this morning, so although I've taken one or two shots, they're not going to look in any way spectacular. There was no real colour as such to play with. Bit of a boring sky really. but really nice, really still, apart from the geese. I'm glad I made the decision not to go and camp down by the lake, because they were out all night honking away. Anyway, there you go. It's been a good night actually. Did actually get some sleep, and no big disasters with the tent really. Other than that, I was on a bit of a slope and kept slipping down in the tent towards the bottom end. But there you go. It's all right. I got some sleep, and now I'm going to go and have a bit of breakfast. Okay, well there you go. Nice clean site. Left exactly the way I found it, apart from a few squashed bits of grass. I've got to say I had a lot of fun there, packing up the camp. I put on one of my guilty pleasures, which is on Spotify, which was Brad Paisley, Moonshine in the Trunk, bit of country, and western. And that was just brilliant. There's a wonderful song on there called Perfect Storm, and it's just got some great lines in it. If you want a good bit of get us off to a fun start to the day music that doesn't take life too seriously, Brad Paisley, Moonshine in the Trunk. It's brilliant. So it's time to go home. I hope you've enjoyed this little return to the Peak District. I certainly have. It's been good to be back here. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to next be around, but probably sometime in the summer. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, you want to see more, then subscribe, and when I do get around to another one, you'll get some kind of notification, no doubt. Do you know what? You just really can't beat this, can you? What a beautiful place England is. It's just hard to credit, isn't it? You get a beautiful place like this and people just leave stuff like that. Just disgusting. Take it home, for goodness sake. Couldn't leave it. Bagged it up. I'll take it home.